you ain't heard about us yet, well, you better know now because it's the place that it all goes down.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the TWSN Soccer Sitdown show. We're joined with the usual Christian Block and Max Marerro. But from now on, we're adding Randall Evans to the squad, team, whatever you want to call it. So, Randall, how are you doing today?
Doing well, fellas. How you guys doing?
Good. Can't complain.
Terrible. But, yeah, I mean, Tottenham ruined my morning. But, yeah. But let's get into it. Let's first start off with Serie A. Randall, we know you're a huge fan of the Serie A, so I'm going to let you start off with this. But obviously Ronaldo's gone right now. Juventus isn't doing that well. The title race, I mean, it's not really a title race. They played 2 matches, but it looks like it's going to be interesting this year, especially because I don't think any of us think Juve is going to really be in it that much this year. Yeah. And also, there's just been a lot of goals. So I'm going to kick it to you first. What do you think so far of Serie A and all the goal scoring?
Serie A is one of the most exciting leagues this year. A lot of exciting storylines. With Ronaldo being gone, I think a lot of teams feel like they have a chance to win it now because a lot of people fail to acknowledge, even though that Ronaldo left, he still had won at least 4 or 5 trophies at his time at Juventus. So the most important storylines I think so far has been Tammy Abraham's transfer to Roma. He's also a blazing star. He has 2 assists in his first game. He was very impactful in the second game as well. So I would say Roma, AC Milan, Lazio, they all feel like they can win it this year. And Lazio scored 5 goals in their game last week. So this week they play AC Milan on the road. So that's going to be a test to see if they're legit or not. But I think a lot of people need to be watching this league for sure because typically everyone's in love with the Premier League and everything. And I get all that. Trust me, I'm in love with it as well. But Serie A is showing that it's going to be one of the most exciting leagues going forward for sure.
Yeah, I think it's – one of the leagues that doesn't get a lot of love, and rightfully so. I mean, now without Ronaldo, that aspect of advertising and everything kind of goes down the drain. But to me, Inter Milan is the team to beat still, which is crazy to say in all honesty, because when you lose a guy like Romelu Lukaku and Achraf Hakimi, it's saying something that you can still be the top dog in your league, in my opinion. And, they made a lot of good signings. Hakan Çalhanoğlu, who not only helps them, but also hurts Milan, AC Milan, of course, because he was that creative midfielder that really, linked up play with Zlatan Ibrahimovic and everybody else, Rafael Leao, those kind of guys in the front, attack for Milan. So, losing him is pretty big. And it's also, adds something alongside Barella and Brozovic in that Inter midfield. They have, Edin Dzeko, who replaces Lukaku. They also have Joaquin Correa, who they got from Lazio, another guy, taking away from another team. So, to me, Inter's the team to beat, but it's wide open. Like Randall said, there is probably a good 3 or 4 teams, Atalanta as well, under Gasperini. I think there are so many different teams in Serie A that could at least challenge, whether it's Napoli, AC Milan, Roma, I think, is really dangerous with Tammy Abraham because I think he's going to score 20 to 25 goals. I think he's that good. Even under Mourinho, who I don't love his tactics, he's still going to get his goals. So I think, with it being on Paramount Plus, if American viewers want to check it out, please do because it's going to be a league that has, at the minimum, 3 to 4 teams challenging for a league title this year.
Exactly. And I want to commend you on that too, because like Inter Milan, more than anything, even though they sold a lot of their big assets this year, they did a fantastic job reloading. In my opinion, I definitely think they got stronger across the board. Like you said, Çalhanoğlu from the Turkish international from AC Milan, he was there for his whole career. Moving to Inter Milan was a huge surprise and on a free transfer at that. So when you're moving on a free transfer to the rival team, he obviously was ready for that big move. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes down the road here. But like I said, I would also encourage American fans, if you're looking for a league that's definitely different and fast-paced, it gives you a different kind of feel. It's not even a finesse league, I would say. I think it's more so focused on tactics. The goalkeepers are not always a focus there because there's going to be 2 to 3 goals a game anyway. So I think a lot of it's the complete opposite of the Premier League in terms of defense. What do you say, Joe?
Well, I'm going to kick it to Max first, but before I do that, I just want to say with Roma, I can see them having a title charge. Jose Mourinho, first year, is different. He knows how to develop strikers, so I think Tammy Abraham, he has a chance to go back to Chelsea in a few years too because of the buyback clause they put in there. Watch out for that because Tammy's going to be a great, great striker under and after Mourinho.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that a little bit more in depth. I think Roma is probably the team to watch this year in Serie A. all things considered, you bring in a guy that, in my opinion, has one of the greatest legacies in the history of the game from a managerial standpoint in Jose Mourinho. Yeah, he's kind of slowed down in recent years, and his tactics kind of look somewhat outdated. But if you're looking at if you're breaking down the Italian league, those are tactics that will help you win that league. That's the way that league functions. So I think you bring in an experienced manager, a guy that's done it at that level before in that competition. And he's brought in he's injected a lot of youth in that squad, and which frankly already has a plethora of youth and also a good mixture of experience as well. He's actually made the Henrik Mkhitaryan experiment work, which is kind of shocking, considering their history. But that team looks like a force to be reckoned with. Like Christian mentioned, Inter Milan. Yeah, obviously, you lose a guy like Romelu Lukaku. That's a very, very tough loss. But I mean, that they've rebuilt very, very strong. They brought in Denzel Dumfries for like 22 mil when they sold Hakimi for 80. I mean, that's really good business if you ask me. And like you guys mentioned, Çalhanoğlu as well on a free transfer. That's huge for them. I think it's going to be a really open-ended league, which screams entertainment if you're a fan, even especially as a neutral. It's a league that's been trending away from Juve dominance for this past year, definitely, but it seems like it's been trending that way for a little bit longer. And this is the year that we're finally going to see that, because you take out that Ronaldo X factor, then the league itself is going to be more balanced. And I'm interested to see if it could be concentrated on youth more, because I think that's been a big criticism on the Serie A competition, is that they have a lot of aging players that, albeit they're good players, but that's the one leg that say, the French league have. They're the youth development league as well as the Dutch league. So maybe it's time for the Italian league to start trending that way. And it seems like they are with teams like Inter Milan and Roma. So it's going to be a really, really entertaining league. Excuse me.
Yeah, and one thing I want to bring up that I found interesting when kind of studying and watching Italy in Euros is that after they got bounced from the 2018 World Cup, like they didn't make it, they decided to take a step back and decided to change the whole way they play soccer in Italy. Because we know Italy historically plays very defensive. I mean, Serie A for years is just a very defensive tactical league. But now we're seeing these spurts of goals, and the reason for that is because the Italian head of soccer, they decided they wanted to emphasize that. That's one of the reasons Mancini was put in charge of the team as well. And we're seeing that now in Serie A, all the way down to the youth leagues. So I really think that's one of the reasons, the main reason why Serie A has become so exciting. You could go back 4 or 5 years where you'd be like, who really cares about the Serie A anymore, right? But now it's a really exciting league. They got young players like Chiesa and Moise Kean, who I think is going to be really good for Juventus this year. I think getting out of Everton is going to be good for him. He looked good at PSG, looked good when he was really young and at Juve. And I think without Ronaldo there, I think that also helps his growth a little bit, because Ronaldo, I mean, yes, he can play out wide, but I mean, at this point in Ronaldo's career, he's better as a number 9. So I'm intrigued to see that, because I mean, you guys know I'm Moise Kean super fan, so I'm going to be on the lookout for him.
Well, and he's had a level of success with Allegri before, so it makes sense that it would work out.
I think the biggest question for Juve this year is how can they get the best out of Paulo Dybala, right? Like, he's such a baller. We know he's an Argentinian international. He's been on the team for 5-6 years now. But it's like, I just feel like for the life of them, they cannot understand the best way to utilize him as a player, right? Because he's not necessarily a defensive midfielder. He's not going to give you the defensive aspect of the game. He's not box to box. But he's enough of an attacking threat where I feel like he should have more numbers. He should have more consistency. He should dominate the midfield. I think he's just he's going to waste there. It kind of reminds me of when Icardi, before he moved to PSG at Inter, for the long time they were getting the best out of him, but before he moved to PSG, they weren't necessarily finding the best way to utilize his talent. So I think that's the biggest question with Juventus, right? Because they added Locatelli from Sassuolo, right? They added Locatelli. It's a huge transfer for them. But I just feel like they need to figure out what they need to do now to make themselves more of a threat attacking and defensively as well. Because I think, as you guys have mentioned, all great points, at the end of the day, whoever can have the best defense towards the end of the season is most likely going to win the league.
And I think that's going to be kind of hard on AC Milan. While they have a decent defense, you can even argue good. I think the loss of Donnarumma is going to hurt them.
Absolutely.
Because Donnarumma, I think he's a top 3 goalie in the world right now. I mean, especially after that Euros performance where he was just locked down. Ironically, he can't get a start with PSG yet, which is kind of odd, because I think he's better than Navas. But again, that's just me maybe being biased, but I don't know. Who do you guys think comes out on top of Serie A? I'm leaning towards Roma or Lazio.
I think Roma. I'm really banking on Mourinho having a last dance in Serie A. I think Roma's trending in the right direction. I think their whole team looks more fluid. They look more together. And I don't know. I mean, obviously you have probably teams that are better on paper at the moment, that have done it before. Inter Milan, a lot of those players are still there. With the obvious big losses. AC Milan were fighting tooth and nail for most of last year. So you can't rule them out. So I'm just going to trend to Roma because I just think they have the best manager in the league. I just think it's either him or Allegri, and I just think this is a rebuilding year for Juve. So I don't know if I can really count Juve this year. So I'm going to have to go with Jose Mourinho and Roma.
What about you, Christian?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is which teams deal with playing in multiple competitions better, because Inter, they haven't, been super successful outside of Serie A, but they've been successful in the league. Then you have a team like AC Milan, who's going to be back in the Champions League starting next week for the first time in, a pretty, long time. So I think how these teams deal with playing, whether it's in the Conference League, because I believe Roma's in the Conference League. There's, of course, some teams in Europa League. So I think that's going to be an interesting part. I don't think it's going to take, 90 points to win the league. It's probably going to be in the 80s, probably, mid to high 80s. I don't think it's going to take that much more than that. So to me, it's Inter. I'm still high on them. I think Atalanta's not getting enough love. Those are my two teams, but you guys mentioned Roma. I think they're incredibly, slept on. I think Zaniolo as well off the wing is another youngster we have to mention, who's coming back from a pretty long-term injury. So I'm interested to watch Roma. They're probably one of the 3 or 4 most optimistic teams in Europe, whether it's Serie A, Premier League, just because of how interesting it's going to be under Mourinho. But to me, it's Inter, Atalanta, but it's wide open.
I think my two teams would be Lazio or Milan. I say Lazio because Lazio for years now has kind of had the same core and same team. They remind me a lot of Liverpool in the sense that they've had that camaraderie, the chemistry that they've built over years and years. Even though they've kind of had a revolving door of managers, they've shown that they can do it at a consistent level, right? Ciro Immobile, what he has done at Lazio, becoming an all-time leading goal scorer, he's been incredible there. And I think doing that and having the experience that they do with Luis Alberto, obviously getting Felipe Anderson back from West Ham, that's a huge signing for them. He flourished there before his move away. I think I know for a fact Lazio and AC Milan are going to be up there. So that's my two picks for sure. But if I had to choose one, I would choose Lazio.
One thing on Immobile, that man is Timo Werner regen. I'm sorry, he is. He just is. I watched him play. He does well for Lazio, but I think it's because he gets so many chances.
Yeah.
He looked bad in Durham, man. He looked bad. Moise Kean is starting striker for
yeah, their attack lives and dies with Immobile. That's kind of who their team is really centered around. But I think they still don't get enough credit for their attacking threat because AC Milan has a lot of new signings and they're fresh blood. They're back in the Champions League. They're the 7-time winners and everything. But I don't necessarily think that their coach is going to know how to deal with fixture congestion. It takes a special manager to understand that although you want to field your best 11, you need to still understand down the road that, as December, January, February, when the fixtures get very heavy, you need to have the best depth and everyone needs to be playing their best football. So,
and that's why Mourinho's going to win the league because he's the special one. He knows what to do. But moving on, let's move to a little bit of Serie A in a way because Ronaldo left Juve. Let's talk about him. He's debuting against Newcastle today for Manchester United. He's in the starting lineup. What do you guys think? What do we expect from him this year, and what do we expect from him today?
I think the expectation for Ronaldo is at least 25 league goals at the very least. I mean, this is the most clinical player probably in the history of soccer. You could make the argument. And although he is 36 years old, and the United midfield, they're one player away, in my opinion, from being like hitting that potential that everyone expects them to hit. It's really a defensive mid, but you even give Ronaldo a half chance, you expect him to put it away. So I think the expectation, especially since he's starting today and it's only, September 11th, you expect Ronaldo to get at the very least 25 league goals. I mean, I just don't see how you don't. I'm not saying that he'll necessarily hit that number, but that should be the expectation. And I think that, This team United, they're built, in my opinion, they'll definitely compete for the league, but I think they're more suited to cup competitions like the Champions League. That's the kind of dynamism they have. And I just think that maybe, that hole in the midfield won't allow them to be consistent enough to win a league, which I'm not going to say they can't, but I don't think so. But for a cup competition like the UEFA Champions League or even a domestic cup competition, this team is perfectly suited for that. So I think the expectation also is Ronaldo will bring Manchester United a trophy this year, whether that's the Champions League, Premier League, or any of the domestic cups. I think that has to be the expectation for this team this year and for him.
I think this is the best squad. Go ahead, Christian.
No, you're good.
I think this is the best squad that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has had since he's started at United. The thing that's very interesting about the squad, though, I'll say, is that they have a very unique mix of veterans and young stars. I think Mason Greenwood is one of the most talented youngsters in the league, if not the world. When Marcus Rashford is hitting on all cylinders again, they're going to be very dominant as well. This is the first time since he started and took over as the caretaker manager when Mourinho was fired that they've had the kind of squad depth that they need to compete, right? And like touching on what Max said, Ronaldo's presence alone is going to bring expectations that they can achieve anything because he's such a serial winner wherever he's gone, right? He's won every single league that he's competed in. He sets the standard, he sets the pace. Having a pace setter like that is going to motivate those guys that are maybe younger who or maybe idolized or watched Ronaldo growing up. Now they have no excuses, right? They know that this is the expectation, this is the target, and they should be able to compete and win. So I think the expectation for Ronaldo should definitely be top scorer on their team, definitely leading the charge in assists. And he's definitely a great locker room guy as well, right? We've seen him be a leader of men wherever he's gone. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can finally get the best out of Jadon Sancho. Hopefully Rafael Varane can hit his stride as well in the new Premier League, in the new league that he's playing in, because we've seen it be very hard for players to adjust to the Premier League initially if they're not necessarily suited for this play style of the Premier League as well, right? So we've seen finesse players that get transferred such as Said Bin Rama, finesse players that kind of rely on finesse and techers, right, to kind of really do what they need to do. Physical players tend to do better than finesse players. So I would love to see how that works out in terms of the experiment of young players versus the veterans that have been there for years.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you guys. The expectations are there already, and they were already there before he even got there. So it's, an expectation of, at least challenging for the league. I don't think I'm sure there are United fans that believe they need to win it, but for all of us who are not United fans, the expectations for them is to at least challenge. I still believe Chelsea and City are ahead of them, but they're in that, a little lower tier with Liverpool, I would say, still, even with Ronaldo, just because of how good, City and Chelsea are in terms of squad depth. That's, where they really, are up ahead of United because, we talk about the issues in the midfield, Fred, McTominay, Nemanja Matic. To me, Paul Pogba's best position is on that left side. So if you're going to have to play him in a pivot, that means you have to, lose his ability to, really have that freedom off the left because, if he loses the ball in the middle, in the pivot, there's counterattacks and that's trouble for them defensively. But, if he's playing off the left, him losing the ball out there is not, as tough going back defensively. So I'm still interested to watch them. Max mentioned it, though. I think he's spot on. Their group is really favorable in the Champions League. They have Atalanta and Villarreal, also young boys. So they should win that group at least. Maybe, if Atalanta, shocks some people again, they'll get out of the group. That's not an issue. That's the competition I'm most interested to watch them in. Two legs, really have, a lot of depth, at least going forward. That's where they're really successful. Cavani's not even going to start. Anthony Martial's not going to play. If they play Paul Pogba off the left, Marcus Rashford's not going to play that much either. So they are loaded in that front line. And, Ronaldo's going to score his goals, whether it's in the Champions League, the cup competitions in England, the Premier League. I think he's going to be, really fantastic for them. He's going to be good in the air as well, which, is a little bit different from all the other strikers they have because he's going to be able to win aerial duels up front. So they can play a lot of different ways with him. I'm sure he'll play off as a number 9 only. I don't see him going back out on the outside. But, yeah, Max is right. Somewhere in that 25 to goal range. I think he could score 30, 35 in all comp maybe. depending on how much he plays. But I assume he's going to be right into it, and he could definitely score against Newcastle today. So we'll see what he does.
And the crazy part is too, right before Joe, they moved off Dan James, so they wouldn't have done that if they didn't believe in their squad. So I think that's something I did not expect for him being sold to Leeds. It shows that they believe on the squad that they have already, and they're looking to build something with Ronaldo as their central piece, right? So, it'll be interesting to see how Jadon Sancho, adjusts right back to being in the Premier League when he played for City all those years ago. And they showed that they're going to be aggressive next summer as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what Ronaldo can do. I feel like I have the most doubts out of anyone here of United because Ronaldo could easily win the Golden Boot. I wouldn't be surprised if he does that, but I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know because this team still doesn't have a DM. Fred is not a good player. He's just not. Let's be honest. McTominay sometimes looks good, sometimes doesn't, but he looks better when he's in a pivot with Fred. He doesn't really look good when he's solo. When Rashford comes back, who comes off the bench? Does Pogba come off the bench? Does Pogba stay on the left? I mean, because we know Bruno and we know that Pogba doesn't work well on the pivot. He works better when he's more advanced with the DM. I would have liked to see them, instead of going out for Ronaldo, let Mason Greenwood cook, and in turn, bring in Wilfred Ndidi or someone like that. Bring in Ndidi. I would have liked that.
I was seeing reports too that they're still going after Mason. Not Mason Mount. They're still going after Declan Rice. So that to me is very interesting because Declan Rice is a name that Chelsea was very interested in as well. But West Ham has set a price. It was like 80 or 90 million euros. So they're saying that they definitely value him as their best asset. Someone like Declan Rice would fit in perfectly into what they're trying to do. Right? He's tall.
I mean, he would be a game changer for them.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I feel like Ndidi's the better sign. I think Ndidi's a much better player than Rice. I think Rice is a good player, but I also think he's a little overrated.
I think he looks better than he is for a lot of pundits and critics because he plays for West Ham United, right? Like in a team with more depth and talent, he probably looks mediocre. But for what United are trying to accomplish, I think he's the best fit. Ndidi is not necessarily as tall. He's not going to win you aerial duels. He's not going to be a threat on set pieces. Whereas Declan Rice is he's been leading West Ham from very young. He's been handed the captain's badge once or twice, I believe. So he has that leadership ability. And that's one thing that United is lacking. And I think that's why Ronaldo means such a big signing for them, because when they paid all that money to get Maguire from Leicester City, right, he hasn't necessarily panned out the way they thought he would.
I disagree. He's looked great.
Yeah.
He's looked great, man.
It depends on how you measure success. To me, absolutely, when he was the first year that he was brought in, he was great, right? This was before they made all the signings they've had this year. But Wan-Bissaka and Maguire, I think they were slotted to have more impact than they had, at least for Wan-Bissaka.
I completely disagree with this. I thought he looked better this last year and this season than he did when he first came in. I thought when he first came in, he struggled a little bit trying to get involved, and then he really took off. Wan-Bissaka, I'm a Wan-Bissaka stan, so I mean, I think he does what he's supposed to do. A lot of people don't like him. I understand he's not that good in attacking, and sometimes he has a tough time back post tracking and stuff. But I don't know. I really like Wan-Bissaka, but I understand he's not worth 50 million.
The resilience of Luke Shaw has been incredible to watch too, right? He had that big injury, and he had a fantastic year last year. He's one of the best defenders in the entire league last year.
And he can get forward, man.
Yeah,
Watch out for him in Fantasy Premier League. That man's going to spam crosses to Ronaldo. That could be a lot of assists, man.
But I think it's United being, I know for a fact it's United being insatiable, right? They have all these defenders, they have all these good talented players in terms of depth, and they're still deciding to go after players like Trippier, right? Kieran Trippier just won the league with Atletico Madrid this past year. So it's funny to me how they have all this depth, they have ideas of what they want to do tactically, but they're still targeting players that they think can help them improve. So I think they know for a fact they're not where they want to be in terms of the defensive team.
Why would you go over after Trippier when you need a DM? They need a DM. That's what they needed the most this summer, and they just ignored that position.
I agree with that, but also I think they just believe a lot in McTominay. I think they think McTominay can hold that position. We haven't really seen it, but I think that's probably why. And also Trippier, just on a side note, I think he would fit that team perfectly because the thing with Wan-Bissaka is he's so defensively stout, but he's just not great with the ball going forward. And I just think that they need a guy that can help Luke Shaw on the wide or out wide, to play those passes into the box and create more from the right side, because you can't. It's a little unbalanced when you have Luke Shaw that high up the pitch on the left side being creative, and then you have Wan-Bissaka attempting to do that, but then he loses the ball or he misplaces his pass. There's not enough balance, and I think balance is a huge part for them. So while I agree defensive midfielder is the most important, I think that, getting a guy like Trippier or a genuine like right wing back or full back, I think could really, really do wonders for them.
McTominay doesn't do that well he only does well in a pivot, in my opinion. And that's a pivot with Fred. When he's in a pivot with not Ronaldo, with Paul Pogba, I don't think he looks that great. I don't know. I like McTominay. You guys know that, but they really need someone like who could really stand in there and like an elite DM. That's what they need.
It kind of reminds me.
Or they're gonna have to sell Pogba. Where do you fit him in the? I mean, unless
he can leave for free.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I love Pogba. I think he's a great player, but I don't know where you put him in on this team, because I don't like him in a we've all said, him in a pivot doesn't really work that well. Him on the left wing works, but do you drop Rashford to him?
I don't know. I think they're missing a Kyle Walker / Danny Rose type player. That's really what they need, because what he brought Tottenham a couple years ago was such an attacking threat, and he was so solid defensively. They need a Trent Alexander-esque, Robertson-esque player to really fit what they're trying to do, because the dangerous part about Robertson and both Trent Alexander-Arnold for Liverpool, their attacking threat, their crossing ability is immense. Every single time down the wing, down the road in the final third, they're a threat to cross the ball in for set pieces and to score. So it's just they need something that can give them that element, because they have what they want to do at offensively minded. They know what they want to do for offense. It's just a matter of finding out what their best 11 is with a player that can do what they need to do defensively and offensively as well. And a player like that does not come few and far between. So it's hard to find that kind of player that gives you both elements.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, I've seen people bang on the table for Trippier. I think I could see it. I can see it working. But again, like I've been saying,
I think, not to interrupt, but I think it would be kind of a panic. I think it really depends on how Wan-Bissaka fits their system going into the winter transfer window. Because I think if he plays well enough, then it may not be necessary to go out and buy that player. Maybe that's more of a summer transfer. But at least in the immediate future, I'm so surprised that they did not get Camavinga for that price. It was a relatively cheap price. I think it was 30 mil. Okay, for a player like Camavinga, that's a pretty good deal even now at this stage of his career. I'm so surprised they didn't go in and place a bid and get him and secure that signing, because that would have been.
Well. They were in Saul
right
before Chelsea got him, so they're definitely making inquiries. I just think they're not set or sold on anybody yet. I think a player like Jules Koundé would do really well at United. He's basically what they need. Jules Koundé gives you that attacking threat. He's very solid defensively. He's been playing for Sevilla.
He would not go there.
He can play off the right as well. He's got versatility.
I guess he can play.
I think he played right back for France in a Euro match. I don't remember who, but
I don't think he's
one of the group games.
Andre would do well.
I don't think
a Reece James type player. Reece James, what he brings to Chelsea as a wing back is something they can't replace. They have Chilwell, they have Reece James, they have Rudiger, they have Christensen. That depth alone can get you a lot of different options, and I think that's where Ollie's weakness is his tactics. He's not as tactically sound as Tuchel. Tuchel knows exactly what he wants to do defensively. Tuchel's biggest thing has been missing an attacking threat, and an attacking threat that they can rely on. And it's the opposite for them, because they have that and they don't have the defensive stability. So.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that probably wraps up our United takes here, our United topic. I mean, do you guys have anything else you guys want to say on that, or before we close that one up? All right, so then what were we saying, Randall?
No, we're good to go. We're good to go.
Okay, so let's take a move on to another United. This time, West Ham United. They've looked great this year. I can't lie. I didn't buy it. I thought when they got into Europa play, they'd struggle with depth and everything. And obviously, they haven't really played in Europa yet, but they've been impressive. Mikel Antonio, he's been insane. The entire team just playing really well under Moyes. I know I'm gonna kick it to Randall first, because he's been beating the drum on the West Ham bandwagon here. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
impressed.
Listen, all aboard, all aboard. We got plenty of seats. I think I love what West Ham United is doing. Right, they're the biggest team in East London. They're a huge fan base and following. First off, before they were having the recent success that they've always had a really big, strong fan base. What Antonio is doing is incredible. He's not necessarily the traditional number 9. He's not gonna, he's not gonna shatter it past the keeper for top bins. He's not necessarily gonna score goals from headers and everything, but he's a target man, and he's a very consistent target man. He broke the record against Palace the second week of the season. He's all-time leading goal scorer. So what he's been able to do this year and last year especially has been incredible to watch his ascension as a player. He's from London as well, so it's been cool to watch him do it for a city that he grew up in. What they're building at United is special. It kind of reminds me of what Chelsea did in 2016-17. They believe in their manager. They believe in the tactics. Pablo Fornals actually just scored a Euro international goal this past break. He's been one of their centerpieces for years. Syed bin Rama they bought last year for £30 million from Brentford, who just got promoted last year as well. So he's finally paying dividends. He had 2 goals, 3 assists these last couple games. So what they've been able to do with the consistency is incredible. So the biggest question for them now will say, hey, can they do it consistently? Can they do it when they have to play Europa League matches? Can they do it when Boxing Day comes up and then you have 30 matches in 12 days? Can they do that? So I think that's the biggest thing to watch for the Hammers.
I think, and I agree with all your points, Randall, about West Ham, and I think it's a great situation, great story. But I think the one mistake they made this summer was not bringing back Jesse Lingard. I think Jesse Lingard, especially the latter half of last season when he was on loan for them, he was their most impactful player. Him and Mikel Antonio worked together. It just seemed like, in general, he just gelled really, really well with that team. There wasn't that, usual 1 to 2, even 3 game transitionary phase for him. He just went in, scored on his debut, and he just looked fantastic from then on. And I don't see, even from a Manchester United standpoint, I just don't know if I see that he really is even going to be playing much this year for them. I just don't see how he fits all his system, especially now when you had guys like Ronaldo and Jadon Sancho. I just don't see how Jesse Lingard becomes a part of that equation personally. So I just think it really would have benefited him personally and really would have benefited West Ham's chances at competing for, say, Europa League, should he have decided to go there and for the clubs to facilitate that transfer. I think that's the one thing that West Ham could have done to really improve their side this year.
Well, Jesse Lingard didn't want to go. He wanted to stay at Manchester United.
Right. He wanted to fight for his place.
Yeah, he wants to fight for his place. He's not going to get a place there. It didn't make sense because West Ham inquired. They tried to make a move for him, and I think he turned it down or something like that.
He did turn it down. Yeah, he turned down a contract extension in talks with United. So it's interesting because he didn't want to leave on loan in the first place. He ended up playing very well, and then United wanted to bring him back because of his form. So it's interesting.
I mean, I think he wants to play Ronaldo.
I mean, who
you saw
does?
that post you saw that post he put out with Ronaldo there?
I think it's the lore of United alone, though. Because, I mean, think about how big Manchester United is as a club, not just globally, but in England especially. If you're English, that's a big club. So, playing for United and doing well is a dream for a lot of players, even if you're not necessarily going to be the go-to guy. That is better to him than playing for West Ham United. I get it. I really do. But I think what West Ham is building is very special, and he has a chance to be a central part of that. So
yeah, I'd rather play than sit the bench too, because that's just me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I wanted to mention.
That's it.
Huh?
He's probably only going to play in Carabao Cup games for United.
Maybe.
Maybe a one-off start in the Premier League. Maybe if they want to rest Bruno.
They're not resting Bruno. Bruno will say no to that. Bruno's going to come off.
Yes, but they have the luxury of at least having that option.
Yeah.
Going back to Bruno and Manchester United real quick, I can't wait to see when they get their first penalty. I want to see.
Probably going to be today.
I do think it's going to be today.
Who's taking their penalty? I'm genuinely curious.
I think for this game, they have to give it to Ronaldo since it's the debut, assuming he doesn't score, an open goal, like an open play goal, rather. I think I think if it's a penalty, you're going to give it to Ronaldo, but I'm curious to see who takes it for them long term.
Right? I feel like it's got to be Bruno. Bruno's a much better penalty taker, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and mention my piece on West Ham. I agree, Max. Missing out on Jesse Lingard is a big deal, but they did get Nikola Vlasic from CSKA Moscow, who, funny enough, I just looked at his career, trajectory. He actually was at Everton in their youth system. I didn't even know that, but he had 25 goals in 77 appearances for CSKA Moscow, and he's a center attacking mid. So I think that provides another guy they can go to if they don't, if they want to rest Pablo Fornals or a guy like Syed Benrahma. I think he's a good guy. He's 23, so he's still pretty young. But I think the biggest thing, they got Kurt Zuma as well. The biggest thing is not getting a backup striker. I think, Antonio, the way he plays, he's destined to get some knocks around, whether it's in October, November. That's where their biggest problem is. And if they have to, go to a number 9, other than him, it's probably, somebody that's not suited well to play that position, like a guy like maybe Yarmolenko, or if you want to play, a guy like, I guess, Syed Benrahma as a, false 9, there's just not a good alternative to Antonio. And while I think he could score, 18 to 22 goals and hopefully play above 30 games, not having a, backup striker not only hurts them in the Premier League, but it also hurts in the Europa League, because if he's not available, their chances of, making a deep run in that competition are very slim. Because while they have everything else in the team, I love their defense. Their midfield's really strong with Rice and Souček and that pivot. They just don't have a backup striker, and that's an issue, in so many different competitions. So they'll challenge for Europa League. I think another Europa League spot, just because, they're still pretty good. They're going to be strong defensively. I think they'll be a top, 6 or 7 defense in terms of, goals allowed. But, this is their opportunity to, make a deep run in the Europa League, right? And, not signing a backup striker after losing Sebastian Haller, who really disappointed in the Premier League, it's kind of a disappointment in my eyes. So I think it's tough to see them being successful, not only in the Premier League, but also in the Europa League.
I honestly totally forgot about the Kurt Zuma signing. That is one of the most marquee signings under the radar that is going to improve them immensely. He has 99 appearances in the Premier League. He's won it all for Chelsea. He has a lot of experience playing under different managers, so he's going to adjust really well tactically. He's 6'3". He's 26, 27 years old. He's excellent in aerial duels. He brings a lot of stability to their defense as well. That was a very good signing for West Ham, and I think went under the radar for a lot of people, but it shouldn't go under the radar. It's a great signing. So West Ham United is an enigma to me, but they're also a mystery because they have the pieces to compete, but they need to kind of shell out a little bit more money to really make sure they're solid. It kind of reminds me when Burnley made Europa League like 3 years ago, and it was completely out of nowhere. They finished 7th. And then they went into Europa League competition and they didn't even do well because they weren't necessarily ready to make those signings to compete. So,
yeah, I think Christian brought up a great point about Antonio and his depth behind him, because there's no way that let's assume West Ham, because they're a good enough team, they get to the knockout stages, right? They're gonna probably get past the group stage. How do you balance your team? Who do you behind Antonio? If he gets hurt or picks up a knock, he's not going to be able to play Europa League and Premier League. It's just not going to work for him. Too many games going on, especially with FA Cup games and Carabao Cup games, where he might come in as a sub every once in a while, or even playing some. That's going to be something I really want to see, because I think West Ham can get off to a really strong start to start the season. I think they could be pushing top 4 for the first, close to at least until Thanksgiving, right? But then when those games keep piling on top of each other, I don't know how they hold. I really don't. And what are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you think they can with what they have, or do you think they need to make a signing in the winter to push?
Yeah, to me, they have to sign a second striker in January, because you mentioned it perfectly. Asking Antonio to play 2 games a week, let alone 1, with his injury history, it's a big gamble. And they have to get a striker in January, in my eyes, just to take some blow off him, because he's going to have to play. You'd assume they're going to probably stretch him out to play both Europa League and Premier League, and put FA Cup and the Carabao Cup aside, because this is their chance to really make a run in Europe. And I think he's probably going to have to play 50 games, and that's just asking way too much of a guy who's just had too many little knocks throughout the last 3 or 4 years. So I don't know who's on the market. It probably should be a 6-month loan or something like that, just to get over the line for the moment. But if they can even get to January, fighting for Europa League spot per se. I think you're right. They're off to a good start so far. They got a pretty good big result against Leicester at home. I forget who else they've managed to take points off of, but this is their chance to get fifth, sixth again. And I think they missed it while making some good signings, because Zuma's an excellent signing. Randall's right. Adding a guy like him alongside Ogbonna and Craig Dawson, those are their three main center backs. That's a great signing, even for the price as well. It's a guy who has plenty of pedigree and experience. So they're good defensively. There's no issues there, especially with Soufal off the right as well, who's been excellent. But they're just not – they don't have enough in the front to, go through 4 competitions and be successful in all 4. So I think that's their biggest problem. If they don't sign a striker in January, I really don't know how they're going to be successful in every competition they play in.
It's kind of been like watching them grow up, though, right? Before our eyes, like watching Koufal, watching Fornals, watching, Said Bin Rama. Like David Moyes has those guys playing the right way. They love their football. And when you enjoy your football, it's a lot less stressful. You see the things in front of you. You say, okay, we have all these matches to play. We have Europa League competition for the first time. But when you're starting to enjoy your football, when you genuinely care about the people you play with, it might sound cliche, but it makes a difference. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. I think they're the biggest storyline. They could have the success of a Leicester a couple years from now, and this could be the start of that. I really do truly believe that. Leicester's definitely fell off, I think, in the last 2 years because they're not very good defensively. But what Brendan Rodgers has been able to do at Leicester City, having those guys playing with confidence, challenging for top 4 spots that are usually dominated by the big 4, they don't see themselves as a small club. And that's the first step, right? Because like when you have the ambition to go ahead and to make something of your season, that's the first step, because London is so congested with all these clubs, right? With Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Brentford now. So it's a lot of clubs in London. Like what about they have to make sure that they distinguish themselves, not only through their play, but they're being consistent, because any team can kind of have a good year, but we've seen it happen all the time, right? Like a team has a good year and the next year, they're 9th, 10th, or 11th, or they're 12th in a table. So it's all about consistency in the Premier League, I believe so.
I do think the camaraderie that you bring up is going to help them because, I'm going to kind of put this in a comparison. West Ham seems like they have a lot of chemistry, team chemistry, a lot of camaraderie. Compare that to Tottenham, which has a lot more talent than West Ham, right? They don't seem like they have that. They don't seem like there's a lot of camaraderie there. They don't seem like they're very close and have a good chemistry anymore. It seems like the locker room's just been completely broken recently. And that's why I think we can see West Ham jump Tottenham this season if, again, they can somehow manage to not get injury, and if they can kind of, with their squad, that kind of manage it out. Because right now, I think we can clearly say West Ham is the better team than Tottenham, right? However, I just don't know if they're going to have the depth to compete Tottenham over the time, but I think the reason that they're better right now isn't talent, it's because they have more chemistry and camaraderie. I think that's a great point, Randall.
Yeah, it's about trust too. Look at a team like Liverpool. They trust each other. Like they might be down 3-0, but I guarantee you none of them panic. They might be down 2-1. They don't panic. Remember the goal that Alisson scored against Norwich to secure Champions League football for them? They believed that he could do something like that. It starts with belief. It's an underrated part of football that not many people talk about. Having that belief in your teammates and your belief in your manager that you're going to have the best tactics, he has your best interests at heart. It gets tough. Premier League is very competitive. Even if you think you deserve more minutes, if you're not necessarily playing every week, it's hard to keep yourself motivated, So, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing for Tottenham is building that chemistry, because before they fired Pochettino, they had that chemistry. They had that belief. They really believed in each other. That comeback against Ajax in 2019 in Champions League, with Lucas Moura scoring that hat trick to get you guys to the final, that was a big deal because that team really believed in each other. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, and to add to that, with Liverpool, a lot of it comes from having a manager that can encourage his players to go out and provide their best and play for one another. And I think Jurgen Klopp is the perfect example of a man manager. And I think I think Moyes has that as well in his locker. I think he's definitely an underrated man manager. And also, in the case of Liverpool, it's players bought into a system and a way of playing. And it seems to me that Moyes' style, albeit wasn't very successful for, say, United, it was very successful for Everton, right? And you're seeing that now with West Ham. It's a certain system that's fitting the personnel around him. And it seems like the players are bought into that system. And a lot of that, it's a credit to the manager. right? It's just Moyes has done wonders for West Ham. And I think that, like you guys have all mentioned, they're a team that's heading on the up. Now, they're in European competition. I'm interested to see how they play there. I think the only thing that can really derail the momentum this team is having are squad depth issues, possibly, especially in the attack, like Christian was mentioning. Because if Mikel Antonio goes down with a knock, it's kind of hard to find a guy that can even somehow replicate what he provides on the pitch. I think you also need to give him the ability to continue to thrive, because he won Premier League Player of the Month for a reason. He's been in fantastic form. So you need to keep giving him players that can help get the best out of him and that can help provide him the insurance necessary that if he were to go down with a knock, the team won't fall off a cliff, frankly.
Or skip a beat. Yeah, I agree with you, Matt.
Absolutely. And we have anything else to touch on West Ham, or we're good? All right, so that'll wrap it up here for us on the TWSN Soccer Sit-Down Show. Thank you for Randall. We're happy this is your debut, and we're happy
Appreciate it, guys.
joining us. We're excited for the many, many more weeks we have with you on here. Christian and Max, we do our thing. I mean, we know how this goes. We got this. We got Randall here now, too. We're just going to be cooking with fire, man.
Yeah, man.
Let's make sure you guys, we have the TWSN Tailgate Show coming up next in about 15 minutes. Make sure you guys tune into that for college football. We know you guys go crazy for college football, so make sure you guys tune into that. But for us, the TWSN Soccer Sit-Down Show, we're signing off.
See you guys.
Get up, let me begin this.